Except that you won't be there, and I'll be alone, she thought bitterly while closing the door of Dr. Oslin's office behind her. She slumped against the wall and squeezed her eyes shut, trying to quiet the agitated mess of thoughts fluttering inside her head. And then she opened them again when she heard her name in Malcolm's voice. He was standing in front of her with On, studying her with a half-amused, half-worried expression. They were holding Starbucks cups. The smell of caramel and peppermint wafted over, making her stomach churn. Hey. On took a sip of her drink. Why are you taking a standing nap next to your advisor's office? Olive pushed away from the wall and walked a few steps away from Dr. Oslin's door, rubbing her nose with the back of her hand. My abstract got accepted. The SPD one. Congrats. On smiled. But that was pretty much a given, right? It was accepted as a talk. For a few seconds, two pairs of eyes just stared at her in silence. Olive thought that Malcolm might be wincing, but when she turned to check, there was just a vague smile pasted on his face. That's awesome?
Yeah.
On's eyes darted to Malcolm and back to Olive. That's, great. It's a disaster of epic proportions. On and Malcolm exchanged a worried glance. They knew very well how Olive felt about public speaking. What is Dr. Aslan saying about it? The usual. She rubbed her eyes. That it will be fine. That we'll work on it together. I think she's right, On said. I'll help you practice. We'll make sure you know it by heart.
And it will be fine.
Yeah. Or it won't. Also, the conference is in less than 2 weeks. We should book the hotel, or are we doing Airbnb? Something odd happened the moment she asked the question. Not with On. She was still peacefully sipping on her coffee. But Malcolm's cup froze halfway to his mouth, and he bit his lip while studying the sleeve of his sweater. About that, he began. Olive frowned. What? Well. Malcolm shuffled his feet a little, and maybe it was accidental, the way he seemed to be drifting away from Olive, but she didn't think so. We already have. You already booked something? On nodded cheerfully. Yes. She didn't appear to notice that Malcolm was about to have a stroke. The conference hotel.
Oh.
Okay. Let me know what I owe you then, since the thing is, Malcolm seemed to move even farther away. What thing? Well. He fidgeted with the cardboard holder of his cup, and his eyes darted to On, who seemed blissfully oblivious to his discomfort. Jeremy's hotel room is paid for because of that fellowship he's on, and he asked On to stay with him. And then Jess, Cole, and Hikaru offered for me to stay with them. What? Olive glanced at On. Seriously? It will save all of us a lot of money. And it will be my first trip with Jeremy. On interjected distractedly. She was typing something on her phone. Oh my God. Guys, I think I found it. A location for the Boston event for BIPOC women in STEM. I think I've got it. That's great, Olive said weakly. But I thought we'd room together. On glanced up, looking contrite. Yeah, I know. That's what I told Jeremy, but he pointed out that you know. Olive tilted her head, confused, and On continued. I mean, why would you want to spend money on a room when you could stay with Carlson?
Oh.
Because I'll miss you, but it's not as if we'll be in the rooms for anything other than sleeping. Right. She pressed her lips together and added, Sure. On's grin made her want to groan. Awesome. We'll get meals together and hang out for poster sessions. And at night, of course. Of course. It was all Olive could do not to sound bitter. I look forward to it, she added with as good a smile as she could muster. Okay.
Great.
I gotta go. The Women in Science Outreach Committee is meeting in 5. But let's get together this weekend to plan fun activities for Boston. Jeremy said something about a ghost tour. Olive waited until On was out of earshot before turning to face Malcolm. He was already raising his hands defensively. First of all, On came up with this plan while I was monitoring that 24-hour experiment. Worst day of my life. I cannot graduate soon enough. And after that, what was I supposed to do? Inform her that you're not going to stay with Carlson because you're fake dating? Oh, but wait. Now that you've got a huge crush on him, maybe it's sort of real. Okay, I get it. Her stomach was starting to ache. You still could have told me. I was going to. And then I dumped Neuro Jude, and he went crazy and egged my car. And after that, my dad called me to say hi and asked me about how my projects are going, which devolved into him grilling me on why I'm not using AC, Elegans model, and well, you know how incredibly nosy and micromanaging he can be, which led to us having an argument, and my mom got involved, and he stopped and took a deep breath. Well, you were there. You heard the screams. Bottom line is, it totally slipped my mind, and I'm so sorry. It's fine. She scratched her temple. I'm going to have to find someplace to stay. I'll help you, Malcolm told her eagerly. We can look online tonight. Thanks, but don't worry about it. I'll manage. Or not.
Probably.
Likely. Since the conference was in less than 2 weeks, and everything was likely already booked up. What was left was undoubtedly so out of her price range, she'd have to sell a kidney to be able to afford it. Which could be an option she did have too. You're not mad, right? Yes.
No.
Maybe a little.
No.
It's not your fault. She hugged Malcolm back when he leaned into her, reassuring him with a few awkward pats on the shoulder. As much as she'd have liked to blame him for this, she only had to look at herself. The crux of her problems, most of them, at least, was her moronic, harebrained decision to lie to On in the first place. To begin this fake dating sham. Now she was giving a talk at this stupid conference, probably after sleeping at a bus station and eating moss for breakfast, and despite all of this, she couldn't stop thinking about Adam. Just perfect. Laptop under her arm, Olive headed back to the lab. The prospect of getting her slides in order for her talk simultaneously daunting and depressing. There was something leaden and unpleasant weighing on her stomach, and on impulse she made a detour to the restroom and entered the stall farthest from the door, leaning against the wall until the back of her head hit the cold tile surface. When the weight in her belly began to feel too heavy, her knees gave out on her and her back slid down until she sat on the floor. Olive stayed like that for a long time, trying to pretend that this wasn't her life. Chapter 13. Hypothesis. Approximately 2 out of 3 fake dating situations will eventually involve room sharing. 50% of room sharing situations will be further complicated by the presence of only one bed. There was an Airbnb 25 minutes from the conference center, but it was an inflatable mattress on the floor of a storage room, charging $180 per night, and even if she could have afforded it, one of the reviews reported that the host had a penchant for role-playing Viking with the guests, so no, thank you. She found a more affordable one 45 minutes away by subway, but when she went to reserve the room, she discovered that someone had beaten her to it by mere seconds, and she was tempted to hurl her laptop across the coffee shop. She was trying to decide between a seedy motel and a cheap couch in the suburbs when a shadow cast over her. She looked up with a frown, expecting an undergrad wanting to use the outlet she'd been hoarding, and instead found.
Oh.
Adam was standing in front of her, the late afternoon sunlight haloing his hair and shoulders, fingers closed around an iPad as he looked down at her with a somber expression. It had been less than a week since she'd last seen him, 6 days to be precise, which was just a handful of hours and minutes. Nothing, considering that she'd barely known him a month. And yet it was as if the space she was in, the whole campus, the entire city was transformed by knowing that he was back. Possibilities. That's what Adam's presence felt like. Of what, she was not certain. Her mouth was dry. An event of great scientific interest, considering that she'd taken a sip from her water bottle maybe 10 seconds ago. You're back. I am. She hadn't forgotten his voice, or his height, or the way his stupid clothes fit him. She couldn't have. She had two medial temporal lobes, fully functioning and tucked nicely inside her skull, which meant that she was perfectly able to encode and store memories. She hadn't forgotten anything, and she wasn't sure why right now it felt as if she had. I thought. I didn't, yes, Olive. Wonderful. Very eloquent. I didn't know that you were back. His face was a little closed off, but he nodded. I flew in last night. Oh. She should have probably prepared something to say, but she hadn't expected to see him until Wednesday. If she had, maybe she wouldn't have been wearing her oldest leggings and most tattered t-shirt, and her hair wouldn't have been a mess. Not that she was under any illusion that Adam would have noticed her if she'd been wearing a swimsuit or a gala dress. But still, do you want to sit? She leaned forward to gather her phone and notebook, making room on the other side of the small table. It was only when he hesitated before taking a seat that it occurred to her that maybe he had no intention of staying, that now he might feel forced to do so. He folded himself into the chair gracefully, like a big cat. Great job, Olive. Who doesn't love a needy person who hounds them for attention? You don't have to. I know you're busy. MacArthur grants to win and grads to brutalize and broccoli to eat. He'd probably rather be anywhere else. She bit her thumbnail, feeling guilty, starting to panic, and then he smiled. And suddenly there were grooves around his mouth and dimples in his cheeks, and his face was completely altered by them. The air at the table thinned. Olive couldn't quite breathe. You know, there's a middle ground between living off brownies and exclusively eating broccoli. She grinned, for no reason other than Adam was here with her. And he was smiling. That's a lie. He shook his head, mouth still curved. How are you? Better now. Good. How was Boston?
Good.
I'm glad you're back. I'm pretty sure the biology dropout rates have seen a steep reduction. We can't have that. He gave her a patient, put upon look. You look tired, smartass.
Oh.
Yeah, she rubbed her cheek with her hand, ordering herself not to feel self-conscious about her looks, just like she'd always made a point not to. It would be an equally stupid idea to wonder what the woman Holden mentioned the other day looked like. Probably stunning. Probably feminine, with curves. Someone who actually needed to wear a bra. Someone who was not half covered in freckles, who had mastered the art of applying liquid eyeliner without making a mess of herself. I'm fine. It's been a week, though. She massaged her temple. He cocked his head. What happened? Nothing. My friends are stupid, and I hate them. She felt instantly guilty, and made a face. Actually, I don't hate them. I do hate that I love them, though. Is this the sunscreen friend?
On.
The one and only. And my roommate, too, who really should know better. What did they do? Olive pressed into both eyes with her fingers. It's a long story. They found alternative accommodations for SBD, which means that now I have to find a place on my own. Why did they do that? Because, she briefly closed her eyes and sighed. Because they assumed that I'd want to stay with you. Since you're my, boyfriend. He went still for a couple of seconds. And then, I see.
Yep.
A pretty bold assumption, but she spread her arms and shrugged. He bit the inside of his cheek, looking pensive. I'm sorry you won't get to room with them. She waved her hand. Oh, that's not it. That would have been fun, but it's just that now I need to find something else nearby, and there are no affordable options. Her eyes fell on the screen of her laptop. I'm thinking of booking this motel that's an hour away, and won't they know? She looked up from the grainy, shady-looking picture of the place.
Eh?
Won't I know that you're not staying with me?
Oh.
Where are you staying? The conference hotel. Of course. Well. She scratched her nose. I wouldn't tell her. I don't think she'll pay too much attention. But she'll notice if you're staying 1 hour away. Yes. They would notice and ask questions, and Olive would have to come up with a bunch of excuses and even more half-truths to deal with it. Add a few blocks to this Jenga tower of lies she'd been building for weeks. I'll figure it out. He nodded slowly. I'm sorry. Oh, it's not your fault. One could argue that it is, in fact, my fault. Not at all. I would offer to pay for your hotel room, but I doubt there's anything left in a 10-mile radius. Oh, no. She shook her head emphatically. And I wouldn't accept it. It's not a cup of coffee.
And a scone.
And a cookie. And a pumpkin frappuccino. She batted her eyes at him and leaned forward, trying to change the topic. Which, by the way, is new on the menu. You could totally buy it for me, and that would make my day. Sure. He looked slightly nauseous. Awesome. She grinned. I think it's cheaper today, some kind of Tuesday sale, so. But you could room with me. The way he put it forward, calm and sensible, almost made it sound like it was no big deal. And Olive almost fell for it, until her ears and brain seemed to finally connect with each other, and she was able to process the meaning of what he'd just said.
That she could room
with him. Olive knew full well what sharing quarters with someone entailed, even for a very short period. Sleeping in the same room meant seeing embarrassing pajamas, taking turns to use the bathroom, hearing the swish of someone trying to find a comfortable position under the sheets loud and clear in the dark. Sleeping in the same room meant no.
Nope.
It was a terrible idea. And Olive was starting to think that maybe she had maxed those out for a while. So she cleared her throat. I could not, actually. He nodded calmly. But then he asked equally calmly, why? And she wanted to bang her head against the table. I couldn't. The room is a double, of course, he offered, as if that piece of information could have possibly changed her mind. It's not a good idea.
Why?
Because people will think that She noticed Adam's look and immediately hushed. Okay, fine. They already think that. But, Adam. She rubbed her forehead with her fingers. There will be only one bed. He frowned. No, as I said, it's a double. It's not.
It won't be.
There will be only one bed, for sure. He gave her a puzzled look. I got the booking confirmation the other day. I can forward it to you if you want. It says that. It doesn't matter what it says. It's always one bed. He stared at her, perplexed, and she sighed and leaned helplessly against the back of her chair. He'd clearly never seen a rom-com or read a romance novel in his life. Nothing. Ignore me. My symposium is part of a satellite workshop the day before the conference starts, and then I'll be speaking on the first day of the actual conference. I have the room for the entire conference, but I'll probably need to leave for some meetings after night 2, so you'd be by yourself from night 3. We'd only overlap for one night. She listened to the logical, methodical way he listed sensible reasons why she should just accept his offer and felt a wave of panic sweep over her. It seems like a bad idea. That's fine. I just don't understand why. Because I don't want to. Because I have it bad. Because I'd probably have it even worse after that. Because it's going to be the week of September 29th, and I've been trying hard not to think about it. Are you afraid that I'll try to kiss you without your consent? To sit on your lap, or fondle you under the pretext of applying sunscreen? Because I would never. Olive chucked her phone at him. He caught it in his left hand, studied its glitter amino acid case with a pleased expression, and then carefully set it next to her laptop. I hate you, she told him, sullen. She might have been pouting and smiling at the same time. His mouth twitched. I know. Am I ever going to live that stuff down? Unlikely. And if you do, I'm sure something else will come up. She huffed, crossing her arms over her chest, and they exchanged a small smile. I can ask Holden or Tom if I can stay with them and leave you my room, he suggested. But they know that I already have one, so I'd have to come up with excuses. No, I'm not going to kick you out of your room. She ran a hand through her hair and exhaled. You'd hate it. He tilted his head. What? Rooming with me? I would.
Yeah.
You seem like a person who, you seem like you like to keep others at arm's length, uncompromising and ever so hard to know. You seem like you care very little about what people think of you. You seem like you know what you're doing. You seem equally horrible and awesome, and just the thought that there's someone you'd like to open up to, someone who's not me, makes me feel like I can't sit at this table any longer. Like you'd want your own space. He held her gaze. Olive, I think I'll be fine. But if you end up not being fine, then you'd be stuck with me. It's one night. His jaw clenched and relaxed, and he added, We are friends, no? Her own words, thrown back at her. I don't want to be your friend, she was tempted to say. Thing was, she also didn't want to not be his friend. What she wanted was completely outside of her ability to obtain, and she needed to forget it. Scrap it from her brain.
Yes.
We are. Then, as a friend, don't force me to worry about you using public transportation late at night in a city you're not familiar with. Biking on roads without bike lanes is bad enough, he muttered, and she immediately felt a weight sink into her stomach. He was trying to be a good friend. He cared for her, and instead of being satisfied with what she currently had to ruin it all and want more. She took a deep breath. Are you sure that it wouldn't bother you? He nodded, silent. Okay then. Okay. She forced herself to smile. Do you snore? He huffed out a laugh. I don't know. Oh, come on. How can you not know? He shrugged. I just don't. Well, that probably means you don't. Otherwise, someone would have told you. Someone. A roommate. It occurred to her that Adam was 34 and likely hadn't had a roommate in about a decade. Or a girlfriend. He smiled faintly and lowered his gaze. I guess my girlfriend will tell me after SBD then. He said it in a quiet, unassuming tone, clearly trying to make a joke, but Olive's cheeks warmed, and she couldn't quite bear to look at him anymore. Instead, she picked at a thread on the sleeve of her cardigan and searched for something to say. My stupid abstract. She cleared her throat. It was accepted as a talk. He met her eyes. Faculty panel?
Yeah.
You're not happy? No, she winced. Is it the public speaking thing? He'd remembered.
Of course he had. Yeah.
It will be awful. Adam stared at her and said nothing. Not that it would be fine, not that the talk would go smoothly, not that she was overreacting and underselling a fantastic opportunity. His calm acceptance of her anxiety had the exact opposite effect of Dr. Oslin's enthusiasm. It relaxed her. When I was in my 3rd year of grad school, he said quietly, my advisor sent me to give a faculty symposium in his stead. He told me only 2 days before, without any slides or a script. Just the title of the talk.
Wow.
Olive tried to imagine what that would have felt like, being expected to perform something so daunting with so little forewarning. At the same time, part of her marveled at Adam self-disclosing something without being asked a direct question. Why did he do that? Who knows? He tilted his head back, staring at a spot above her head. His tone held a trace of bitterness. Because he had an emergency. Because he thought it'd be a formative experience. Because he could. Olive just bet that he could. She didn't know Adam's former advisor, But academia was very much an old boys' club, where those who held the power liked to take advantage of those who didn't without repercussions. Was it a formative experience? He shrugged again. As much as anything that keeps you awake in a panic for 48 hours straight can be. Olive smiled. And how did you do? I did. He pressed his lips together. Not well enough. He was silent for a long moment, his gaze locked somewhere outside the cafe's window. Then again, nothing was ever good enough. It seemed impossible that someone might look at Adam's scientific accomplishments and find them lacking, that he could ever be anything less than the best at what he did. Was that why he was so severe in his judgment of others? Because he'd been taught to set the same impossible standards for himself? Do you still keep in touch with him? Your advisor, I mean. He's retired now. Tom has taken over what used to be his lab. It was such an uncharacteristically opaque, carefully worded answer. Olive couldn't help being curious. Did you like him? It's complicated. He rubbed a hand over his jaw, looking pensive and far away.
No.
No, I didn't like him. I still don't. It took him so long to continue. She almost convinced herself that he wouldn't. But he did, staring at the late afternoon sunlight disappearing behind the oak trees. Brutal. My advisor was brutal. She chuckled, and Adam's eyes darted back to her face, narrow with confusion. Sorry. She was still laughing a little. It's just funny to hear you complain about your old mentor. Because he sounds exactly like you. I'm not like him, he retorted, more sharply than Olive had come to expect from him. It made her snort. Adam, I'm pretty sure that if we were to ask anyone to describe you with one word, brutal would come up 1 or 10 times. She saw him stiffen before she was even done speaking, the line of his shoulders suddenly tense and rigid, his jaw tight and with a slight twitch to it. Her first instinct was to apologize, but she was not sure for what. There was nothing new to what she'd just told him. They'd discussed his blunt, uncompromising mentoring style before, and he'd always taken it in stride. Owned it even. And yet his fists were clenched on the table, and his eyes were darker than usual. Adam, did I? She stammered, but he interrupted her before she could continue. Everyone has issues with their advisors, he said, and there was a finality to his tone that warned her not to finish her sentence. Not to ask what happened. Where did you just go? So she swallowed and nodded. Dr. Aslan is, she hesitated. His knuckles were not quite as white anymore, and the tension in his muscles was slowly dissolving. It was possible that she'd imagined it. Yes, she must have. She's great. But sometimes I feel like she doesn't really understand that I need more guidance, support, some practical advice, instead of blind encouragement. I'm not even sure what I need myself. I think that might be part of the problem. I'm not very good at communicating it. He nodded and appeared to choose his words carefully. It's hard mentoring. No one teaches you how to do it. We're trained to become scientists, but as professors, we're also in charge of making sure that students learn to produce rigorous science. I hold my grads accountable, and I set high standards for them. They're scared of me, and that's fine. The stakes are high, and if being scared means that they're taking their training seriously, then I'm okay with it. She tilted her head. What do you mean? My job is to make sure that my adult graduate students don't become mediocre scientists. That means I'm the one who's tasked with demanding that they rerun their experiments or adjust their hypotheses. It comes with the territory. Olive had never been a people pleaser, but Adam's attitude toward others' perception of him was so cavalier, it was almost fascinating. Do you really not care? She asked, curious. That your grads might dislike you as a person?
Nah.
I don't like them very much either. She thought of Jess and Alex and the other half a dozen grads and postdocs mentored by Adam whom she didn't know very well. The thought of him finding them as annoying as they found him despotic made her chuckle. To be fair, I don't like people in general. Right. Don't ask, Olive.
Do not ask.
Do you like me? A millisecond of hesitation as he pressed his lips together.
Nope.
You're a smart ass with abysmal taste in beverages. He traced the corner of his iPad, a small smile playing on his lips. Send me your slides. My slides. For your talk. I'll take a look at them. Olive tried not to gape at him. Oh, you. I'm not your grad. You don't have to. I know. You really don't have to. I want to, he said, voice pitched low, and even as he looked into her eyes, and Olive had to avert her gaze because something felt too tight in her chest. Okay. She finally managed to snap out the loose thread on her sleeve. How likely is it that your feedback will cause me to cry under the shower? That depends on the quality of your slides. She smiled. Don't feel like you have to hold back. Believe me, I don't. Good.
Great.
She sighed, but it was reassuring, knowing that he was going to be checking her work. Will you come to my talk? She heard herself ask, and was as surprised by the request as Adam seemed to be. Do you want me to?
No.
No, it's going to be horrible and humiliating and probably a disaster, and you're going to see me at my worst and weakest. It's probably best if you lock yourself into the bathroom for the entire duration of the panel, just so you don't accidentally wander in and see me making a fool of myself. And yet, just the idea of having him there, sitting in the audience, made the prospect seem like less of an ordeal. He was not her advisor, and he wasn't going to be able to do much if she got inundated by a barrage of impossible questions, or if the projector stopped working halfway through the talk. But maybe that wasn't what she needed from him. It hit her then what was so special about Adam, that no matter his reputation or how rocky their first meeting, since the very beginning, Olive had felt that he was on her side. Over and over, and in ways that she could never have anticipated, he had made her feel unjudged. Less alone. She exhaled slowly. The realization should have been rattling, but it had an oddly calming effect. Yes, she told him, thinking that this might very well turn out to be all right. She might never have what she wanted from Adam, but for now at least, he was in her life. That was going to have to be enough. I will then. She leaned forward. Will you ask a long-winded, leading question that will cause me to ramble incoherently and lose the respect of my peers, thus forever undermining my place in the field of biology? Possibly.
He was smiling.
Should I buy you that disgusting? Adam gestured toward the register. Pumpkin sludge now.
She grinned. Oh, yes.
I mean, if you want to. I'd rather buy you anything else. Too bad. Olive jumped to her feet and headed for the counter, tugging at his sleeve and forcing him to stand with her. Adam followed meekly, mumbling something about black coffee that Olive chose to ignore. Enough, she repeated to herself. What you have now, it will have to be enough. Chapter 14. Hypothesis. This conference will be the worst thing to ever happen to my professional career, general well-being, and sense of sanity. There were 2 beds in the hotel room. 2 double beds to be precise, and as she stared at them, Olive felt her shoulders sag with relief and had to resist the urge to fist pump. Take that, you stupid rom-coms. She may have fallen for the dude she'd begun to fake date like some born-yesterday fool, but at least she wouldn't be sharing a bed with him anytime soon. Given her disastrous past couple of weeks, she'd really needed the win. There were a number of little clues that Adam had slept on the bed closest to the entrance, a book on the bedside table in a language that looked like German, a thumb drive, and the same iPad she'd seen him carry around on several occasions, an iPhone charger dangling from the power outlet, a suitcase tucked by the foot of the bed, black and expensive-looking. Unlike Olive's, it probably hadn't been fished out of the Walmart bargain bin. I guess this is mine then, she murmured, sitting on the bed closest to the window and bouncing a few times to test the firmness of the mattress. It was a nice room. Not ridiculously fancy, but Olive was suddenly grateful for the way Adam had snorted and looked at her like she was crazy when she'd offered to pay for half of it. At least the place was wide enough that they weren't going to have to brush up against each other every time they moved around. Staying in here with him wouldn't feel like a singularly sadistic version of 7 minutes in heaven. Not that they'd be together much. She was going to give her talk in a couple of hours, then go to the department social and hang out with her friends until, well, as long as she feasibly could. Odds were that Adam already had tons of meetings scheduled, and maybe they wouldn't even see each other. Olive would be asleep when he came back tonight, and tomorrow morning one of them would pretend not to wake up while the other got ready. It was going to be fine. Harmless. At the very least, not make things worse than they currently were. Olive's usual conference outfit was black jeans and her least frayed cardigan, but a few days ago Anne had mentioned that the ensemble might be too casual for a talk. After sighing for hours, Olive had decided to bring the black wrap dress she'd bought on sale before interviewing for grad school and black pumps borrowed from Anne's sister. It had seemed like a good idea at the time, but as soon as she slipped into the bathroom to put on the dress, she realized that it must have shrunk the last time she washed it. It didn't quite hit her knees anymore, not by a couple of inches. She groaned and snapped a picture for Anne and Malcolm, who texted her, respectively, still conference appropriate, and a fire emoji. Olive prayed that Anne was right as she combed the waves in her hair and fought against dried-out mascara, her fault for buying makeup at the dollar store, clearly. She had just got out of the bathroom, rehearsing her talk under her breath, when the door opened and someone, Adam, of course it was Adam, entered the room. He was holding his key card and typing something in his phone, but stopped as soon as he looked up and noticed Olive. His mouth opened and that was it. It just stayed open. Hey. Olive forced her face into a smile. Her heart was doing something weird in her chest, beating a little too quickly. She should probably have it checked as soon as she got back home. One could never be too careful about cardiovascular health. Hi. He snapped his mouth closed and cleared his throat. He swallowed and shifted on his feet. Here. Yep. She nodded, still smiling. Just arrived. My flight landed on time, surprisingly. Adam seemed a little slow. Maybe jet-lagged from his own flight, or perhaps last night he'd been out late with his famous scientist friends, or with the mysterious woman Holden had talked about. He just stared at Olive, silent for several moments, and when he spoke, it was only to say, "You look." She glanced down at her dress and heels, wondering if her eye makeup was already smudged. She'd put it on 3 whole minutes ago, so it was more than likely. Professional? That's not what Adam closed his eyes and shook his head, as if collecting himself.
But yes.
You do. How are you? Good.
Fine.
I mean, I wish I were dead. But aside from that. He laughed silently and moved closer. You'll be okay. She had thought sweaters were a good look for him, but only because she'd never seen him wear a blazer. He had a secret weapon all along, she thought, trying not to stare too hard. And now he's unleashing it. Damn him. Agreed. She pushed her hair back and smiled. After I die. You're fine. You have a script. You memorized it. Your slides are good. I think they were better before you made me change the PowerPoint background. It was acid green. I know. It made me happy. It made me nauseous. Anyway, thanks again for helping me figure it out. And for answering the 139 questions I asked. Thank you for taking less than 10 minutes to reply to my emails every time, even when it was 5:30 a.m. and you misspelled consensus, which is unusual of you and makes me suspect that maybe you were still half asleep. And for letting me crash with you. No problem. She scratched the side of her nose. I figured you were using that bed, so I put my stuff here, but if you... She gestured confusedly at the room. No, that's where I slept last night. Okay. She was not counting how many inches there were between the two beds. Definitely not. So, how's the conference so far? Same old. I was mostly at Harvard for a few meetings with Tom. I only got back for lunch. Olive's stomach rumbled loudly at the mention of food. You okay?
Yeah.
I think I forgot to eat today. His eyebrows arched. I didn't think you capable. Hey. She glared at him. The sustained levels of despair I've been engaging in for the past week require a staggering number of calories. In case you... What are you doing? Adam was leaning over his suitcase, rummaging for something that he held out to Olive. What is it? Calories. To fuel your despair habits.
Oh.
She accepted it and then studied the protein bar in her hands, trying not to burst out crying. It was just food. Probably a snack he brought for the plane ride and ended up not eating. He didn't need to despair after all. He was Dr. Adam Carlson. Thanks. Are you? The wrapping of the bar crinkled as she shifted it from one hand to another. Are you still coming to my talk? Of course. When is it exactly? Today at 4, room 278. Session 3B. The good news is that it partially overlaps with the keynote address, which means that hopefully only a handful of people will show up. His spine stiffened noticeably. Olive hesitated. Unless you were planning to go to the keynote address? Adam wet his lips. Her eyes chose that precise moment to fall to the conference badge dangling from his neck. Adam Carlson, Ph.D. Stanford University keynote speaker. Her jaw dropped. Oh my God. She looked up at him, wide-eyed, and... Oh God. At least he had the grace to look sheepish. How did you not tell me that you are the keynote speaker? Adam scratched his jaw, oozing discomfort. I didn't think of it. Oh my God, she repeated. To be fair, it was on her. The name of the keynote speaker was likely printed in font size 300 in the program and all the promotional material, not to mention the conference app and the emails. Olive must have had her head very much up her, but to fail to notice. Adam. She made to rub her eyes with her fingers and then thought better of it. Damn makeup. I can't be fake dating SBD's keynote speaker. Well, there are technically 3 keynote speakers, and the other 2 are married women in their 50s who live in Europe and Japan, so... Olive crossed her arms on her chest and gave him a flat look until he quieted. She couldn't help laughing. How did this not come up? It's not a big deal. He shrugged. I doubt I was their first choice. Right?
Sure.
Because a person existed who'd refuse to be keynote speaker at SBD. She tilted her head. Did you think I was an idiot when I started complaining about my 10-minute talk that will be attended by 14.5 people? Not at all. Your reaction was understandable. He thought about it for a moment. I do sometimes think you're an idiot, mostly when I see you put ketchup and cream cheese on bagels. It's a great mix. He looked pained. When are you presenting in your panel? Maybe I can still make it.
No.
I'm exactly halfway through. She waved a hand, hoping to seem unconcerned. It's fine, really. And it was. I'm going to have to record myself with my iPhone anyway. She rolled her eyes. For Dr. Aslan. She couldn't come to the conference, but, she said, she wants to listen to my first talk. I can send it to you, if you're a fan of stammering and secondhand embarrassment. I'd like that. Olive flushed and changed the topic. Is that why you have a room for the entire length of the conference even though you're not staying? Because you're a big shot. He frowned. I'm not. Can I call you Big Shot from now on? He sighed, walking to the bedside table and pocketing the USB she'd noticed earlier. I have to take my slides downstairs, smartass. Okay.
He could leave.
It was fine.
Totally fine.
Olive didn't let her smile falter. I guess I'll maybe see you after my talk then? Of course. And after yours. Good luck.
And congrats.
It's such a huge honor. Adam didn't seem to be thinking about that, though. He lingered by the door, his hand on the knob as he looked back at Olive. Their eyes held for a few moments before he told her, "Don't be nervous, okay?" She pressed her lips together and nodded. "I'll just do what Dr. Aslan always says." "And what's that?" "Carry myself with the confidence of a mediocre white man." He grinned, and there they were, the heart-stopping dimples. "It will be fine, Olive." His smile softened. "And if not, at least it will be over." It wasn't until a few minutes later, when she was sitting on her bed staring at the Boston skyline and chewing on her lunch, that Olive realized that the protein bar Adam had given her was covered in chocolate. She checked whether she had the correct room for the third time. Nothing like talking about pancreatic cancer to a crowd that expected a presentation on the Golgi apparatus to make an impression, and then felt a hand close around her shoulder. She spun around, noticed who it belonged to, and immediately grinned. Tom. He was wearing a charcoal suit. His blonde hair was combed back, making him look older than he had in California, but also professional. He was a friendly face in a sea of unfamiliar ones, and his presence took the edge off her intense desire to puke in her own shoe. "Hey, Olive." He held the door open for her. "I thought I might see you here." "Oh, from the conference program." He looked at her oddly. "You didn't notice we're on the same panel?" "Oh, crap. I didn't even read who else was on the panel, because I was too busy panicking." "No worries. It's mostly boring people." He winked, and his hand slid to her back, guiding her toward the podium. "Except for you and me, of course." Her talk didn't go poorly. It didn't go perfectly, either. She stumbled on the word Channel Rhodopsin twice, and by some weird trick of the projector her staining looked more like a black blob than a slice. "It looks different on my computer," Olive told the audience with a strained smile. "Just trust me on this one." People chuckled, and she relaxed marginally, grateful that she'd spent hours upon hours memorizing everything she was supposed to say. The room was not as full as she'd feared, and there were a handful of people, likely working on similar projects at other institutions, who took notes and listened raptly to her every word. It should have been overwhelming and anxiety-inducing, but about halfway through she realized that it made her oddly giddy, knowing that someone else was passionate about the same research questions that had taken up most of the past 2 years of her life. In the second row, Malcolm faked a fascinated expression, while Lon, Jeremy, and a bunch of other grads from Stanford nodded enthusiastically whenever Olive happened to look in their direction. Tom alternated between staring intensely at her and checking his phone with a bored expression. Fair, since he'd already read her report. The session was running late, and the moderator ended up giving her time for only one question, an easy one. At the end, 2 of the other panelists, well-known cancer researchers whom Olive had to restrain herself not to fangirl over, shook her hand and asked her several questions about her work. She was simultaneously flustered and overjoyed. "You are so amazing," An told her when it was over, pushing up to hug her. "Also, you look hot and professional, and while you were talking, I had a vision of your future in academia." Olive wrapped her arms around An. "What vision?" "You were a high-powered researcher, surrounded by students who hung on your every word. And you were answering a multi-paragraph email with an uncapitalized no."
Nice.
Was I happy? Of course not. An snorted. "It's academia. Ladies, the department social starts in half an hour." Malcolm leaned in to kiss Olive on the cheek and squeeze her waist. When she was wearing heels, he was just a tiny bit shorter than her. She definitely wanted a picture of the 2 of them side by side. We should go celebrate the single time Olive managed to pronounce Channel right with some free booze. You dick. He pulled her in for a tight hug and whispered in her ear, "You did amazing, Kalamata." And then, louder, "Let's go get wasted." Why don't you guys go ahead? I'll get my USB and put my stuff back in the hotel. Olive made her way through the now empty room to the podium, feeling like a huge weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She was relaxed and relieved. Professionally, things were starting to look up. As it turned out, with adequate preparation, she could actually string together several coherent sentences in front of other scientists. She also had the means to carry out her research next year, and two big names in her field had just complimented her work. She smiled, letting her mind wander to whether she should text Adam to tell him that he was right. She did make it out alive. She should probably ask how his keynote address had gone, too. If his PowerPoint had acted up and he'd mispronounced words like microarrays or karyotyping, whether he planned to go to the department social. He was probably meeting up with friends, but maybe she could buy him a thank you drink for all his help. She would even pay for once. It went well, someone said. Olive turned to find Tom standing behind her, arms folded across his chest as he leaned against the table. He looked as though he'd been staring at her for a while. "Thank you. Yours too." His talk had been a more condensed repeat of the one he'd given at Stanford, and Olive had to admit that she'd spaced out a bit. "Where's Adam?" he asked. "Still giving his keynote, I think." "Right." Tom rolled his eyes, probably with fondness, though Olive didn't quite catch it in his expression. "He does that, doesn't he?" "Does what?" "Outdoes you." He pushed away from the table, ambling closer. "Well, outdoes everyone. It's not personal." She frowned, confused, wanting to ask Tom what he meant by that, but he continued, "I think you and I will get along great next year." The reminder that Tom believed in her work enough to take her in his lab quashed her discomfort. "We will." She smiled. "Thank you so much for giving me and my project a chance. I can't wait to start working with you." "You're welcome." He was smiling too. "I think there are a lot of things we can gain from each other. Wouldn't you agree?" It seemed to Olive like she had much more to gain from it than he did, but she nodded anyway. "I hope so. I think imaging and blood biomarkers complement each other perfectly, and only by combining them can we. And I have what you need, don't I? The research funds, the lab space, the time and ability to mentor you properly."
Yes.
"You do." All of a sudden, she could pick out the gray rim of his cornea. Had he gotten closer? He was tall, but not that much taller than her. He didn't usually feel this imposing. "I'm grateful. So grateful." "I'm sure that." She felt his unfamiliar smell in her nostrils, and his breath, hot and unpleasant against the corner of her mouth, and fingers, a vice-tight grip around her upper arm. And why was he? What was he? What? Hard in her throat, Olive freed her arm and took several steps back. "What are you doing?" Her hand came up to her biceps, and it hurt, where he'd clasped her. God, had he really done that? Tried to kiss her? No, she must have imagined it. She must be going crazy, because Tom would never. A preview, I think. She just stared at him, too stunned and numb to react, until he moved closer and bent once more toward her. Then it was happening all over again. She pushed him away. As forcefully as she could, she pushed him away with both her hands on his chest, until he stumbled back with a cruel, condescending laugh. Abruptly, her lungs seized and she couldn't breathe. A preview of what? Are you out of your mind? Come on. Why was he smiling? Why was that oily, hateful expression on his face? Why was he looking at her like a pretty girl, like you should know the score by now? He looked at her from head to toe, and the lewd gleam in his eyes made her feel disgusting. Don't lie to me and say you didn't pick out a dress that's short for my benefit. Nice legs, by the way. I can see why Adam's wasting his time with you. Though, what are you? Olive. He sighed, putting his hands in his pockets. He should have looked non-threatening, lounging like that. But he felt like anything but. You don't think I accepted you into my lab because you are good, do you? Slack-jawed, she took one more step back. One of her heels almost caught in the carpet, and she had to hold on to the table to avoid falling. A girl like you, who figured out so early in her academic career that fucking well-known, successful scholars is how to get ahead. He was still smiling. The same smile Olive had once thought kind, reassuring. You fucked Adam, didn't you? We both know you're going to fuck me for the same reason. She was going to vomit. She was going to vomit in this room, after all, and it had nothing to do with her talk. You are disgusting. Am I? He shrugged, unperturbed. That makes two of us. You used Adam to get to me and to my lab. To this conference, too. I didn't even know Adam when I submitted. Oh, please. You're telling me you thought your pitiful abstract was selected for a talk because of its quality and scientific importance. He made a disbelieving face. Someone here has a very high opinion of herself, considering that her research is useless and derivative and that she can barely put together two words without stuttering like an idiot. She froze. Her stomach sank and twisted, her feet cemented to the ground. It's not true, she whispered. No? You think it's not true that scientists in the field want to impress the great Adam Carlson enough to kiss the ass of whoever he's fucking at the moment? I certainly did when I told his very mediocre girlfriend that she could come work for me. But maybe you're right, he said, all mocking affability. Maybe you know STEM academia better than I do. I'm going to tell Adam about this. I'm going to, by all means. Tom widened his arms. Go ahead. Be my guest. Do you need to borrow my phone? No, her nostrils flared. A wave of icy anger swept over her. No, she turned around and marched to the entrance, fighting the nausea and bile climbing up her throat. She was going to find Adam. She was going to find the conference organizers and report Tom. She was never going to see his face again. Quick question. Who do you think Adam will believe, Olive? She halted abruptly, just a few feet from the door. Some bitch he's been fucking for about 2 weeks, or someone who's been a close friend for years. Someone who helped him get the most important grant of his career? Someone who's had his back since he was younger than you are? Someone who's actually a good scientist. She spun around, shaking with rage. Why are you doing this? Because I can. Tom shrugged again. Because as advantageous as my collaboration with Adam has been, sometimes it's a bit annoying how he needs to be best at everything, and I like the idea of taking something away from him for once. Because you are very pretty, and I look forward to spending more time with you next year. Who would have guessed that Adam had such good taste? You are crazy. If you think that I'll work in your lab, you are? Oh, Olive. But you will. Because you see, while your work is not particularly brilliant, it does complement nicely the ongoing projects in my lab. She let out a single, bitter laugh. Are you really so deluded that you think I would ever collaborate with you after this? It's more that you don't have a choice. Because if you want to finish your project, my lab is your only opportunity. And if you don't, well, you sent me information on all your protocols, which means that I can easily replicate them. But don't worry. Maybe I'll mention you in the acknowledgement section. She felt the ground flip under her feet. You wouldn't, she whispered. It's research misconduct. Listen, Olive. My friendly advice is, suck it up. Keep Adam happy and interested as long as possible, and then come to my lab, to finally do some decent work. If you keep me happy, I'll make sure you can save the world from pancreatic cancer. Your nice little sob story about your mom or your aunt or your stupid kindergarten teacher dying from it is only going to get you so far. You're mediocre." Olive turned around and ran from the room. When she heard the beep of the key card, she immediately wiped her face with the sleeves of her dress. It didn't quite do the trick. She'd been crying for a solid 20 minutes, and even an entire paper towel roll wouldn't have been enough to hide what she'd been up to.